Hi. I've waited years to say this out loud. My name is Liora Vance, and at 32, I never thought the business I built with my family would be sold, without my consent, forged in my name, and credited to someone else. It should have been the proudest moment of our lives. But instead, I stood in the back of the crowd, watching them cut the ribbon, smile for cameras, and erase me in real time. For years, I sent every paycheck to keep them afloat, while they told everyone I didn't want to be part of the dream. Before I tell you what I did after my own mother said, "You're not part of this business," leave a like if you've ever been written out of your own story, and subscribe. One small click that tells me these stories matter and helps me keep telling them. But back then, I wasn't walking away. I was still begging for a seat at a table I'd built from scratch. It was the grand opening of our new storefront, a warm summer afternoon in downtown Willow Creek. The smell of fresh bread floated through the open doors. Inside, the walls gleamed with new paint, golden sconces flickered softly, and balloons danced lazily in the breeze from the ceiling fans. I'd triple-checked the budget for this launch, down to the last napkin. Still, I stood in the corner, out of frame, adjusting the ribbon one final time with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Taryn, in her buttercream dress and perfect curls, stepped forward with a polished grin. Mom hovered behind her, eyes scanning the crowd like a proud general surveying a battlefield. The mayor said a few kind words. Taryn giggled like she was born for the camera, and then, "I couldn't have done this without my mother, Maris," she announced, placing her arm around Mom's waist. "Her recipes, her courage, her belief in our dream." The crowd clapped. Someone whistled. I smiled, waited. Taryn's voice sharpened. "And of course I handle the operations, the books, the bills. It's a lot, but it's worth it." My heart stuttered. "What?" Mom stepped up to the mic, her tone syrupy. "Our Taryn has turned this little idea into something real. We're so proud of her, so proud of us." And then, with a glance at me, pointed and deliberate, "But Leora's doing fine too. She's chosen not to be part of the business. And that's okay." Silence. I blinked. I couldn't even breathe. Not part of the business? I opened my mouth, closed it. The applause rolled on without me. My name didn't exist in that bakery anymore. I felt invisible, like I had never mattered at all. My fingers gripped the event program so tightly the paper split beneath my thumb. 2 years of wiring every paycheck to cover late rent, 3 loans in my name, endless nights balancing their budgets while Taryn posted latte art on Instagram. I was the bookkeeper, yes, but I was also the banker, the believer, and now just a bystander. I stepped outside. The sun hit my face like a slap. Laughter spilled from inside, warm and cruel. I stood on the sidewalk, watching customers line up at the door, the Vance and Daughters sign swinging above them. Vance and Daughters? Apparently, only one counted. A part of me wanted to march back in, scream, list every dollar, every hour, every damn sacrifice, but instead I walked. One slow step after another, past the flower shop, past the bookstore. I could feel something in my chest breaking loose. Not sadness, not yet. Something colder. "I funded every step," I whispered, staring down at my reflection in the bakery window, and they stabbed me in the back. I turned away. Inside, the ribbon had been cut. The crowd cheered. Taryn posed for a photo with a cupcake in one hand and a knife in the other, and outside, a single tear slid down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away, because for the first time in years I wasn't confused, I was just done. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't always come in one clean slice. Sometimes it comes slowly, like 1,000 tiny cuts you learn to live with until one day you look down and realize you're bleeding out. After the bakery opening, I didn't go home right away. I drove, nowhere in particular, just away. The late summer sun skimmed the treetops as I crossed into the quieter parts of Willow Creek, windows down, the wind loud enough to drown out my thoughts, but not my memories. I used to believe my sacrifices were invisible only because they were quiet, not because they were unwanted. 3 years earlier, I was sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor of our old duplex, sorting receipts into color-coded folders. Taryn was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone, feet tucked into a designer blanket I'd paid for. The apartment smelled like burnt cinnamon, her latest failed baking experiment. "Hey," she called out lazily. "Can you move some of your savings into the business account? "We're short on the flour order." I didn't even flinch. Of course we were short. We were always short. "I just transferred my last paycheck," I said, eyes scanning the balance column for a miracle. Mom's medical bills, the faulty ovens, that month's rent. Every number was a reminder of how much I was pouring into something that didn't even have my name on the lease. Taryn sighed. "Well, figure something out, okay? We have the vendor showcase next week. It needs to look like we've got our act together." I wanted to say no. God, I wanted to say it. But instead I opened another folder. "You're a lifesaver," she mumbled, already halfway through a bottle of wine. She didn't say thank you. She never did. Back in the present, my fingers curled around the steering wheel as I passed the old building. It had been repainted. New sign, new owners, but the same crack in the sidewalk still ran right up to the door, the one I'd tripped over every morning at 5 a.m. when I came in to prep the invoices. I pulled over, just sat there, engine humming, windows open to the buzz of cicadas and the faint scent of fried batter from the diner next door. 3 years. 3 birthdays I skipped. 2 job offers I turned down. 1 life I gave away. And all for what? A line on a speech that never came. Mom had always been the master of guilt-wrapped affection. When I called her once, crying over a maxed-out credit card after buying emergency supplies for a leaky roof, she said, "Sweetheart, we'd be nothing without you." But when the bakery cleared its first real profit the next quarter, she booked a surprise cruise for her and Taryn. That winter, I found out they were splitting profits behind my back. I didn't even get a bonus. I didn't confront them. Not then. I told myself I was overreacting, that family shares, even when it's unfair. But the next spring, Taryn showed up in a new Lexus, white leather seats, custom plates that said baked. She called it an investment, said it made us look polished for vendors. I smiled. I even complimented the paint job. But something cracked quietly in me that day. Not loud. Just something I couldn't unhear. We'd be nothing without you. Nothing. Without me. And yet, I was nothing to them. That realization hit harder than I expected. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, the one with the crooked faucet and flickering fridge light, and stared at a spreadsheet until sunrise. My fingers were cramping, my eyes burning, but my heart numb. I kept replaying their words. Mom's polished voice, Taryn's dismissive laugh. The guilt was never about love. It was leverage, and I'd been bought cheap. Somewhere in the back of my closet was a box, receipts, bank statements, pay stubs. I pulled it out that night, not to confront them, not yet, just to remember that it was real, that I was real, because they were rewriting the story of our bakery, and I was slowly being erased. I drove home as the sun dipped low, brushing the horizon in deep golds and smoky reds. The town was quiet. Willow trees bent toward the road like they were listening. At a stop sign, I spotted Taryn's car, the Lexus, parked outside a wine bar she used to mock. Inside, she was laughing, head tossed back, wineglass in hand, some guy leaning too close. The window framed her like a painting, effortless, radiant, free. She looked nothing like the woman who'd ever worked a 14-hour day or scrubbed burnt caramel off baking sheets. But she was the face of the bakery now. I drove past without slowing, and yet I couldn't stop seeing it, that moment, that image, burned into my brain. A week later, I noticed Mom avoiding my eyes during inventory. She said she was tired, said she had a headache, but then I caught her slipping something into her purse, a wad of cash from the register. My jaw tightened. She noticed, smiled. "We're just borrowing from ourselves, honey," she said sweetly. "It's all the same pot. Only I wasn't allowed to touch the pot, never had been." That night, I found myself saying something I hadn't dared before. "Are you sure you're not just pocketing my work, Mom?" Her eyes narrowed. The smile didn't reach her face. "What kind of question is that?" "I just mean, it feels like I'm the only one sacrificing here." Silence. And then, "Well, maybe if you had more ambition, you'd be at the top too." That was the moment, the twist. I realized they didn't see me as loyal. They saw me as convenient, and I started wondering, if this is what they say to my face, what have they already done behind my back? It started with a drawer that stuck. Old wood, swollen with humidity. I yanked harder than I should have, and papers spilled across the office floor. Receipts, old statements, birthday cards from customers we barely remembered. A crumpled recipe for caramel custard with Mom's faded handwriting. And then, a photo. Us. Back before the lies. Before the bakery had teeth. Taryn was barely 20 in the picture, beaming with a tray of cupcakes. Mom had her arm slung around her shoulder. I stood off to the side, holding a calculator instead of frosting. Even in that still image, I looked like I didn't belong. I pushed the photo aside. That's when I saw it. Wedged between invoices, yellowed and soft around the edges. An envelope, unopened, addressed to Liora Vance. The handwriting was stiff, slanted, mail. No return address. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. Something about it felt off, like it didn't belong in a folder of pastry orders and flower deliveries. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, the edges of the letter trembling in my hands. The paper crackled as I unfolded it and read, "Some debts never vanish, Liora. You may hide behind sugar and smiles, but I haven't forgotten. Your daughter will pay what you owe, one way or another." There was no signature. My skin turned cold, my breath hitched, caught somewhere between my ribs and throat. The floor beneath me felt suddenly distant, like I was floating above myself, watching a different version of Liora fall apart. Who wrote this? What debt? What did they mean? Your daughter will pay? A sound outside, soft, barely a creak. I froze. The bakery was closed, lights dim, front door locked. I rose slowly, holding my breath, walked to the window behind the counter, peered through the slatted blinds. Movement, just a flicker, across the parking lot, a shadow slipping behind a car, gone before I could fully register it. I backed away, heart thudding. Letter still clutched in my hand. I turned off the remaining lights, locked the back door again, checked it twice. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just a customer running late, or a kid. But the truth wouldn't leave me alone. Why had Mom kept this? And more importantly, why hadn't she told me? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that line again. Your daughter will pay. I replayed the last few weeks like a film strip unraveling. Mom's sudden silences. Taryn's aggressive push to rebrand. The missing cash. Was this what they were hiding? Or was there more? At 3:42 a.m., I was back at the bakery, unlocking the office, pulling every drawer, tearing through file cabinets. Nothing. No other letters. No clue. Just that single threat, waiting in the dark. I didn't tell Taryn, didn't mention it to Mom. Something in my gut told me not to, because if they had secrets, I needed to find them on my own. The next morning, I placed the letter inside a plastic folder, labeled it, "Do Not Trust." I tucked it beneath the floorboard in my apartment, right under the radiator, the one that always knocked at night like it had something to say. That folder became my secret, my line in the sand, but the mystery didn't stay quiet. That week, I noticed our deliveries were off. Invoices that should have gone to our suppliers were rerouted. A man I didn't recognize came in asking for Liора's partner. Partner? When I said I didn't know who he meant, he smiled. "I guess she hasn't told you everything, huh?" I opened my mouth to ask, but he was already gone. I stood there, holding a flour bag, hands dusted white, pulse pounding in my ears. Something was happening beneath the surface, and whatever it was, I was the last to know. That night, I sat in the bakery's back office again. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Outside, the rain had started, light at first, then steady, soaking the pavement in silence. I stared at the family photo again. My hand hovered over it, and then I flipped it over. A date, just barely visible in blue ink. August 7th. And below it, a single word, last. What did that mean? Last what? The more I searched, the less I understood. The betrayal I'd believed was financial was starting to feel like something deeper, older, rooted in the past. I thought I knew my mother. I thought I understood Taryn's greed, but maybe they were hiding more than money. Maybe they were hiding history, and I just scratched the surface. I returned the photo to the drawer, snapped it shut, wiped the counter clean with shaky hands, and as I locked up that night, I felt it again. That weight, not fear, not quite, but something else. the sense that the bakery I'd helped build wasn't built on love or loyalty. It was built on something rotten. And now that rot was rising. As I stepped outside, the rain hit my shoulders like a warning. I turned toward the alley, nothing there, but I swear, I felt eyes on me, watching, waiting. They didn't even say my name, not once. The town's Harvest Gala was supposed to celebrate local business partnerships, especially the ones that had made it through the pandemic. Our family bakery had a booth right near the entrance, decked out in golden string lights and autumn leaves glued onto mason jars. Taryn stood center stage, flashing her trademark smile, in a burnt orange blazer I'd definitely never seen on our expense reports. She was holding a mic and a story. Our bakery, she said, was built on love, faith, and hard work. My mom and I poured everything into it, our hearts, our sweat, our savings, and tonight we stand here as proof that women-led businesses can thrive when family supports each other. The crowd applauded, and I just stood there, right by the cider cart, invisible. The cider was warm, a little too sweet. It coated my throat like syrup, too thick to swallow. She didn't even glance at me, not once. I'd made every payment that kept those ovens on, filed every tax return, slept in my car the night the pipes burst because I couldn't afford both repairs and rent, but none of that made it into her speech. Maris, in her wine-colored shawl, waved like a queen beside her, their arms linked, their story rehearsed. It wasn't just erasure, it was theft. I felt my nails digging into the palm of my hand, sharp, deliberate. A few feet away, two women from the Chamber of Commerce clapped politely and leaned in to compliment Taryn's leadership. "She's such a visionary," one of them whispered. Visionary. Taryn hadn't balanced a spreadsheet in her life. I turned away, tried to breathe through the tightness in my chest. That's when I saw it. Taryn, still smiling at the crowd, turned her head just slightly and looked straight at me. No wave, no nod, just a flick of the eyes, a half-second smirk, like she knew exactly what she was doing, like this whole thing, this stage, this crowd, this version of the truth, was just another game. And I wasn't even a player anymore. I stepped outside into the crisp October night. The lights from the event flickered behind me. Laughter echoed across the lawn, and my breath came out in small clouds that disappeared too fast. I walked behind the building toward the rows of vendor tents, pretending to check my phone, but really just trying to stay upright. My head was spinning, not from the cider, from the lie, from the way it settled on me like a second skin. I leaned against the side of a tent, closed my eyes, and let the noise fade. Years ago. Taryn and I used to sit on the bakery floor after closing, eating leftover croissants and dreaming up new cupcake flavors. She used to call me the backbone. "Without you, none of this works," she'd say, mouthful of buttercream. Back then, I believed her. But tonight, under the gala lights, she looked like someone else. And suddenly, I wasn't sure she ever meant it. The wind kicked up, rustling the tent canvas. I wrapped my arms around myself and turned back toward the crowd. That's when I caught her again, Taryn, laughing with the mayor now, holding a mini apple tart and clinking glasses with Mom. And it hit me. They weren't just pretending I didn't matter. They had planned this. The exclusion wasn't careless. It was curated. A new story, told without me. I walked back toward our booth, forcing a smile onto my face, just in case someone looked. No one did. I restocked the napkins, rearranged a tray. Busy work, pointless. And then I felt it. A whisper of perfume, Taryn's signature vanilla jasmine. "You okay?" she said behind me. Too sweet, too light. I turned. She was still smiling, but her eyes were sharp. "You looked a little flustered earlier." I didn't answer. She leaned in, voice low. "Maybe next time wear something less muted." And just like that, she turned and walked off, heels clicking across the pavement like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't yet name. I stood there frozen. Muted? Muted was the word she chose? I looked down at my outfit, plain black blouse, slacks I'd worn to 3 investor meetings. Practical, professional. But muted? Muted was how they wanted me. Not seen, not heard. Just useful enough. Not anymore. I spent the rest of the evening behind the booth, smiling mechanically, handing out cookies and business cards with a name that was starting to taste like ash in my mouth. Vance and daughters. Which daughters? Because one of them no longer existed to them. Later that night, after we packed up, I overheard Mom talking to someone by the parking lot. "She's always been sensitive," she said. And I knew, deep down, she wasn't talking about Taryn. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I just stood in the dark beside my car, keys in hand, heart sinking deeper with every word I didn't say. Because the truth is, I'd been sensitive. I'd been forgiving. I'd been quiet. But they mistook that for weakness. And now they were rewriting everything. I looked back toward the event lawn one last time. Taryn was waving goodbye to the caterers, laughing like nothing could touch her. She turned toward me, just briefly, and winked. A warning, or a promise. I couldn't tell, but I clenched my jaw, because whatever game she thought she was playing, I was finally ready to play back. It was almost midnight when I returned to the bakery. The parking lot was empty, except for Taryn's Lexus glinting under the street lamp like a smug afterthought. I'd told myself I was just dropping off new vendor paperwork, but really, I'd brought a crowbar. The office door creaked open with its usual hesitation. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old flour and fading lavender cleaner, too clean, too staged, like everything here lately. The overhead light buzzed as I clicked it on. I stood for a second, listening, but the only sound was the quiet hum of the fridge compressor from the kitchen. I crossed to the desk, pulled open the middle drawer. Nothing. Lower left. Receipts, a lipstick tube, gum wrappers. Then I reached for the bottom right, the one that had always stuck. The one with the tarnished brass handle, locked. I crouched down, pressed my ear against the wood. No rattling, no papers, just weight. My breath slowed. I slid the crowbar from my bag. The metal bit into the gap with a hard snap. I paused, waited. Still nothing. One deep pull, and the drawer gave in with a violent crack. Inside, a black leather-bound ledger, a bank envelope, and a silver key with a bakery tag I'd never seen. I sat on the floor, legs folded, back pressed against the filing cabinet, hands trembling just slightly. The ledger was heavy, pages thick with ink and intention. I opened it. First page, columns of figures. Second, payment logs, names, codes, withdrawals. Then my name, over and over. And next to it, forged. Taryn had been signing under my name, claiming income, moving funds, for months. Every signature was close, but not perfect. She must have practiced. The envelope was even worse. Bank statements, a second account. One I didn't know existed, tied to the business, but without my name on it. Taryn's handwriting scrawled on the back flap. For Maris, in case of fallout. My mouth went dry. Fallout? I flipped through the rest of the ledger, stomach twisting. There, an entry dated 3 weeks before the gala. Transferred remaining funds. Sale finalized. Blame on Liora. I stopped breathing. They were planning something. Selling? Without me? I stood suddenly, knees unsteady. My hand hit the edge of the desk. The ledger dropped, pages fluttering across the linoleum like wings trying to escape. That's when I heard it. A soft shuffle from the hallway. I froze. And then, her voice. "Well, didn't expect you to break and enter." Taryn leaned in the doorway, one hand on her hip, the other holding her phone like a glass of wine. Her smile was calm, controlled, predatory. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, gaze flicking from the crowbar to the open drawer. "Curiosity's always been your weakness," she said. "That and your annoying sense of fairness." My chest tightened. "You forged my name." She shrugged. "We had to. You were dragging us down, always worried about rules, about paperwork. You were never meant to be in business." "You sold the bakery?" She didn't flinch. "We had no choice. You kept bleeding us dry with your obsessive budgets. We needed fresh capital, fast." "And the account?" "Emergency funds. For Mom. For when things go public." I stared at her, the betrayal settling in slow, acidic waves. "You blamed me," I said, "even after I gave up everything." Her smile faded just for a moment. Then, "You were never cut out for this, Liora. You're just bookkeeper material, not a face, not a founder." And there it was, the real truth, not whispered behind my back, not hidden behind curated speeches or faux sisterhood, just raw, stripped, and sharp. She turned toward the door, then stopped. "Don't try anything dramatic," she added, voice soft like a lullaby. "You'd only embarrass yourself." Then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her. I didn't move for a long time, just stood there, breathing in the quiet wreckage. My hands clenched at my sides, nails biting into skin. She'd sold it, everything I built, everything I protected, gone, behind my back, in my name. And worst of all, they weren't even sorry. I picked up the ledger, held it like something sacred and filthy at the same time. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because if they thought they could bury me under false signatures and quiet exits, they forgot who did the books, who archived every receipt, who knew exactly where the bodies, financially speaking, were buried. I slipped the silver key into my pocket, grabbed the ledger, turned off the light, and as I stepped out into the dark, a question burned through the fury. What exactly did they sell, and to who? I didn't sleep the night I found the ledger. Didn't even try. I sat at my kitchen table with the documents spread out like a puzzle only I could solve. Numbers, dates, account transfers, all of it inked with careful deceit. Outside, the street lamp flickered, casting long, slow-moving shadows across my apartment walls. Inside, the air was still, thick with quiet fury. The kind of fury that doesn't scream, it sharpens. I'd always thought revenge looked like fire, but it's colder than that. Quieter. It looks like spreadsheets and bank receipts and silence. By morning I had a plan, not a full one, but something that looked like the beginning of truth. I drove out to the edge of Willow Creek, to the farmer's market just off Highway 12, the kind of place where people still traded gossip with their produce. That's where I found Eli Harper. He was setting out crates of late-season apples, sleeves rolled to his elbows, fingers still dusted with dirt. We hadn't spoken in months, not since he'd stopped delivering to the bakery after Taryn stiffed him on an order. He looked up when he saw me, didn't smile. "Didn't think you'd show your face here," he said. "I shouldn't have waited so long," I replied. Eli nodded once, then went back to stacking apples. I stepped closer. "I need your help." He paused. "You said that last time, then let her walk all over you again." I didn't know then. Not everything. I handed him the ledger. Didn't say a word while he flipped through it. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. He exhaled slowly. Jesus. She forged my name, sold the business, and they're still pretending I don't exist. He looked up at me. Something shifted in his eyes. "You're not here for sympathy," he said. "No," I said. "I'm here to end it." We sat under the tin awning of his stand, my boots tapping against the dirt, while Eli made a call to someone he knew at the county clerk's office. 10 minutes later, we had a preliminary confirmation. The bakery had indeed been signed over. New ownership was listed, documents sealed, and no trace of my signature on any of the paperwork that counted. Only forged ones on internal ledgers, enough to muddy the waters, but not enough to hold up in court. Yet. I opened my bag, pulled out the USB drive I'd started loading that morning. Scans of every receipt I'd signed, emails, pay stubs, voice memos, every breadcrumb. I pushed it across the table. I need someone who can help me organize this, build a timeline, make it undeniable. Eli hesitated. Then, "You're finally ready, huh?" I nodded. He stood, wiped his hands on a towel. "I'll help, but you need to know something." "What?" He looked out toward the orchard road behind his stand. "Your mom's been here, a lot, talking to folks, asking about old property records, about buyers." My brow furrowed. "Why?" He glanced at me. "She's spooked. Whatever deal Taryn made, Maris didn't sign it just for money. There's something else she's covering." The chill came back, low and slow, working its way down my spine. "What do you mean?" "She used to sell off land with her first husband, got caught skimming once, paid her way out with silence. But not everyone forgot." A name surfaced in my memory. That letter. Some debts never vanish. I didn't say anything, just breathed, let it settle. Later that night I returned to the bakery one last time. Not to confront them, but to retrieve the security camera drives. I knew the system, knew the password, knew which wires connected what. In 15 minutes, I had 6 months of footage downloaded and sealed in a padded envelope. At home, I sat on the floor, surrounded by files, flash drives, voice memos, each one a small match waiting to burn down the lies. I labeled everything, color-coded, organized by date, transaction, and witness, and then I pressed record. I spoke into the mic with a steady voice. This is for the record. My name is Liora Vance. This is what they did. This is what I have. It wasn't for a courtroom. Not yet. It was for me. To remember that my story didn't end with silence. It started with it. But it would end with truth. And as I zipped the folder shut, ready to send it to someone I trusted in town hall, one final thought whispered through my head. If Mom's scared now, what is she really protecting, and who else knows? The orchard was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that wraps around your ankles like mist, making you wonder if you're welcome here at all. I parked by the main barn, tossed the ledger onto the passenger seat, and stepped into the wet hush of morning. The air smelled like damp soil and wood smoke from a nearby chimney. It had rained some time before dawn. The ground gave a soft squish under my boots, and every branch dripped with leftover tension. I hadn't been back in weeks. Not since the fallout, not since the discovery. But now, with the ledger in hand, Eli's warnings echoing in my head, and that strange silver key burning a hole in my coat pocket, I felt something pulling me here, like the orchard was holding something I'd missed. I followed the gravel path past the honey shed, beyond the last row of northern spy trees, toward the part no one touched, where the fence leaned crooked and blackberry vines clawed the edges of the trail. That's where the old tree stood, twisted, half dead, still gripping the earth with roots like veins. Mom had always said it was the family tree, though she'd never explained the joke. The ground beneath it sloped slightly, soft and uneven, like something had once been buried and forgotten. That's when I saw it, a square of rusted metal, barely visible beneath a patch of moss. My breath caught. I knelt, brushed the damp green away with the sleeve of my coat. A safe, sunken into the earth, its top edge flush with the dirt, hinges corroded, handle stiff. I stared at it for a long time. What was it doing here, and why hadn't anyone mentioned it? I pulled the silver key from my pocket, turned it over in my hand. It looked old, polished smooth from time, but the teeth still sharp. I hesitated, then slipped it into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again, gentler this time. Still nothing. Something clicked, but not in the mechanism, in my memory. Years ago, I'd asked Mom what she kept out here. She'd laughed, poured herself more wine, and said, "Legacy, sweetheart. Some things should stay locked." At the time, I thought she was being poetic. Now I wasn't so sure. I tried again, this time pressing down while twisting. The key moved just a fraction. Not enough to open it, but enough to confirm it was the right key, just jammed, or rusted through. Frustrated, I sat back on my heels, brushing damp hair from my face. That's when I noticed the prints. Boot tracks, faint but fresh, leading from the main trail straight to the safe. Someone else had been here, recently, and not just once. There were 3 sets of prints, one larger, one slightly smaller, and one dragging, like someone carrying weight or shuffling. The soil was too soft for exact detail, but they weren't mine, and they weren't old. I stood up fast, eyes scanning the orchard around me. Nothing but trees, stillness, fog rolling low between the rows like breath. I pulled my phone from my coat. No service, typical. I snapped a few pictures of the tracks, the safe, the key. Then I started walking, fast, back toward the barn, toward signal, toward sense. But halfway down the path, something stopped me. A branch cracked, maybe 20 feet behind. Too sharp for wind, too close for comfort. I didn't turn around, just kept walking. The feeling didn't leave. Even in the daylight, the orchard felt wrong, like something was watching. Later that night, I called Eli. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice groggy. "You okay?" "I found something," I said. He didn't ask where, didn't ask what, just, "Are you safe?" "I think so." "What did you find?" "A safe. On the old orchard side, locked, buried, fresh footprints around it. He exhaled, low and tight. That matches something I heard. What? There's a rumor, he said. An old buyer of Maris's used to help launder some assets. He asked about the orchard lockbox at a bar last week. I gripped the phone tighter. Why would Mom bury something out here? You said it yourself. Your name's on nothing. But the orchard? You bought that outright, didn't you? Every acre. Eli's silence was confirmation. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was leverage. Mine. Don't go back there alone, he said. If someone else is watching that site, it means they're nervous, desperate. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. I won't. But I would, because something told me, whatever was in that safe, it was never meant to stay buried, and neither was I. You'd be surprised how quiet freedom can feel. It doesn't come crashing in like thunder. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And for me, it sounded like the soft scrape of a shovel cutting into earth, the crunch of gravel beneath work boots, and the wind rustling the orchard leaves like they were finally breathing again. I stood with Eli beneath a cloudless sky, sleeves rolled, hands blistered, sweat stinging the corners of my eyes. We were planting the first row of apple trees near the edge of the orchard, where the sun hit just right in the morning and the soil turned dark and loose under your fingers. It felt different this time, not like an escape, but like a beginning. I'm not good at planting things, I told him as I awkwardly angled the root ball into place. Eli chuckled, pressing down soil around his own sapling. You're doing fine. You sure? You've already planted something way harder than this, he said. You just didn't realize it. I looked at him. What? Yourself, right here. He didn't mean it like poetry, but it landed that way. And for once, I didn't deflect the compliment. I just kept working, fingers dirty, breath slow, the ache in my shoulders real and earned. We broke for lunch around noon, sitting on overturned buckets in the shade of the barn. I sipped water, wiping dirt from under my nails, and watched the road. No sign of Taryn. No surprise drop-in from Maris, just the quiet hum of summer giving way to fall. A neighbor stopped by, Mrs. Kendrick, from the farmer's market. She brought me 2 jars of jam and a folded newspaper. They're talking about you now, she said with a wink. I raised an eyebrow, flipping the paper open. Front page of the local section. New life for Orchard Hill. Former bakery partner opens independent farmstead. They didn't use my full story, thank God, but they got the bones right. Community-focused, woman-owned, no mention of Taryn or Maris. That stung more than I expected. Not because they deserved credit, but because I still wondered if, deep down, I wanted them to see this, to see me. Later that day, I walked the perimeter of the orchard, clipboard in hand, sketching out where the next rows would go. The breeze picked up, lifting the smell of cider and damp grass. That's when I saw the envelope, tucked beneath a stone at the orchard gate. I scanned the tree line. Nobody. I picked it up slowly. My name on the front. Just that. Liora. The handwriting stopped me. Mom's. I opened it carefully, hands already tense. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded 3 times. Liora, you don't know everything. Please don't make this worse. What you found, it's dangerous. Don't open that safe. If you care about this family at all, walk away. You don't know who you're stirring up. Mom. My stomach dropped. There was no apology, no admission, just a warning, and not even one meant for me. It was for her secrets, her fears. And suddenly, I didn't feel triumphant anymore. I felt like I'd stepped into something older than I understood. Something rotten. I folded the letter and slid it into my pocket, heart racing. Later, over tea, Eli watched me quietly and finally asked, "What's wrong?" I handed him the note. He read it, lips tight, eyes narrowing. "You still think this is just about the bakery?" he asked. "No," I said, "not anymore." We sat in silence for a long while, and then Eli said something I didn't expect. "You ever wonder if the orchard was part of their plan?" I blinked. "You think they wanted me to buy it?" "I think Maris always had a reason, even when she says she doesn't." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lit a single candle on the porch, letting the flame dance while I stared out at the moonlit trees, my orchard, my land. But someone else had walked it before me. Someone who left a safe buried in dirt. Someone who wasn't done watching. And now, someone was warning me to stop. But here's the thing about planting roots. Once they take hold, they don't back down. They push deeper, no matter what's beneath them. So I did what I always do when I'm scared. I wrote everything down, the letter, the footprints, the safe, the warning, because stories are maps, and I needed to see where this one led. The next morning, I found a box outside my front gate. No note, no return address. Inside, a rusted key and a flash drive. The flash drive clicked into place with a soft snap, but it echoed in my chest like a warning bell. I was alone in the orchard office, blinds drawn, laptop humming. The key from the box lay on the desk beside me, cold, rusted, heavier than it looked. I hadn't touched the safe yet, not after Mom's letter, not after the tracks, but the drive couldn't wait. The screen flickered, loaded, one folder, no label, just a single video file, time-stamped 2 months ago. I hesitated, then clicked. The footage was grainy, but clear enough, an overhead angle from what looked like a lawyer's office. Maris sat across from a man in a navy suit, Taryn beside her, too close, too casual. "We'll say Leora's been struggling with emotional instability," Mom said, voice sharp and practiced. "There's history, guilt. She won't fight it if it looks legal." Taryn smiled. "We'll position the orchard as a gift, spin it like we gave her a clean break." "And the buyer?" the man asked. "He's discreet," Mom said, "and he owes me." My stomach turned. I paused the video. Everything stopped. No more guessing. No more giving them the benefit of the doubt. This was a takedown, and I was never meant to see the end of it. I copied the file, saved it twice, printed still frames, built a packet. It was time. The next evening, the town hall buzzed louder than usual, half excitement, half suspicion. Word had spread. The Vance family business had been sold. Quietly, messily. People were curious, hungry. I wore black, no frills, hair tied back, papers clutched in a leather folder that felt heavier than the truth inside it. Eli waited for me at the entrance, arms crossed. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I'm doing it anyway." Inside, the room smelled of sweat, dust, and anticipation. Maris and Taryn were already seated at the front, flanked by 2 local councilmen. Taryn looked polished. Maris looked bored. I walked to the microphone, hands shaking but voice clear. "My name is Liora Vance," I began, "and I'm here to speak as the former co-founder, financial backer, and silent partner of Vance & Daughters Bakery." A ripple passed through the crowd. I held up the folder. For 3 years, I funded this business. I handled the taxes, the debt, the repairs, but 2 months ago, my family forged my signature, erased my name, and sold the company behind my back. Gasps, whispers, eyes shifting toward the front row. Taryn smirked. Maris leaned forward. I continued. "I have bank statements, falsified ledgers, forged documents, and video evidence. They told a lawyer I was mentally unfit to manage the company I built, and that the orchard was a pity prize to keep me quiet." Someone in the back yelled, "Is that true?" Maris stood. "That's enough," she snapped. "This isn't the place." "It is exactly the place," I said. I turned to the screen behind the council's bench. "Play it." Eli, waiting in the wings, hit the remote. The video lit up the wall like a slow-moving car crash. People leaned forward. Gasps turned to silence. The clip ran 2 minutes. That's all it took. When it ended, I faced the room again. I didn't come here for sympathy. I came to show what happens when silence is used as a weapon, when family becomes a cover for theft, and when women like me, quiet, careful, forgotten, decide to stop disappearing. A councilman cleared his throat. "Do you have copies?" "Yes," I said. "With timestamps, notarized statements, and 2 legal affidavits." Maris looked like she'd swallowed gravel. Taryn? Still, except for her foot, tapping against the tile like she couldn't hold still. A woman in the front row turned to Maris. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" Maris didn't answer. She didn't have to. The room was already shifting, not just against them, but toward me. Afterward, I stepped outside into the cold air. Eli followed. That was brutal, he said. That was necessary, I replied. He handed me a paper. Someone left this on your car. It was an old photo, me, 6 years old, in front of the original bakery. Behind me, in the window, a man I didn't recognize. On the back. You're not the only one she fooled. I turned the photo over again and felt something shift in my chest, because maybe this story wasn't just mine after all. The man in the photo wasn't blurry. He wasn't distant. He was looking straight into the bakery window, one hand pressed to the glass behind my 6-year-old self. And I'd never seen him before in my life. The back of the photo didn't give a name, just, "You're not the only one she fooled." I ran my fingers along the edge of the print, tracing the outline of his face. Something about his posture felt familiar. Tight shoulders, wary eyes, jaw locked like it held back more than just words. I didn't know who he was, but I knew where I'd start looking. Eli met me at the library. He already had a laptop open, a binder full of scanned old real estate records next to his coffee cup. I slid the photo across the table. He studied it. "You think he's one of Maris's old clients?" "Or someone worse," I said. "Someone she owes." We started digging, not into family trees or news headlines, but into bankruptcy filings, county land transfers, and shell corporations linked to the bakery from over a decade ago. And after 47 minutes of silence, Eli stilled. He turned the screen toward me. The man's name was Randall Kellen, former business partner of Liora Vance, on record once as a co-signer to an early bakery loan, then removed within the year, right after a civil suit was quietly settled and sealed. "Guess he didn't disappear," Eli muttered. "No," I whispered. "He's been watching." The next day I saw him again. Not in a photo, in real life, at the end of my driveway, leaning against a pine tree like he belonged to it. He didn't flinch when I approached, didn't smile. "Did you leave the picture?" I asked. He nodded once. "Why?" "Because you needed to know who really opened the first bakery." I stared. "You?" He pushed off the tree, straightening. "Your mom was ambitious, but ambition without boundaries gets ugly. She promised me 40%, took my credit, my contacts, even my name. Then she buried the past and played single mom visionary." I felt the weight of the flash drive in my coat pocket. "Why now?" "Because the safe she buried isn't just full of paper." "What is it?" He looked at me carefully. "Proof of who she took money from and why they'd kill to get it back." The orchard felt suddenly colder. My breath came slower. "She said it was legacy," I said. He gave a bitter chuckle. "It is. Just not the kind she wanted to pass down." He pulled something from his pocket, a faded manila envelope. Bank receipts, notes. One letter she wrote to a man named Fenton. "You'll want to read it before anyone else does." I reached for it, but he pulled it back. "Liora, I'm not here to hurt you. But if you open that safe, be sure. What's in there doesn't just destroy her. It links back to people with long memories." I didn't blink. "They already came for me." "Then you don't have time to be afraid." He handed me the envelope and walked back toward a rusted pickup I hadn't even noticed before. The engine turned over once, coughed, and faded down the gravel. Back inside, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. Randall's envelope, the photo, the flash drive, and Mom's handwritten warning. The puzzle was no longer just about betrayal. It was about inheritance, not of love or business, but of damage. I poured tea with trembling hands, the mug rattling against the counter. One of Randall's documents was a loan ledger. It detailed repayments to someone named Everett Fenton, untraceable deposits, no bank address, just P.O. boxes and shell routing codes. And beside one line item in Maris's handwriting, "If Liora ever finds this, we lose everything." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing the orchard's edge, flashlight off, waiting for another figure to appear, but no one came. I couldn't tell if I was being watched anymore or if I'd finally started watching myself. By sunrise, I'd made my choice, the safe. I needed to know. But first, I'd make sure someone else knew too. I wrote a short message, loaded key files onto a second drive, and drove it to a lawyer in town, just in case. Then I returned to the orchard, to the tree, to the rusted metal just waiting for my hand. I gripped the new key, slipped it in, and turned. It opened, and inside, Papers, photos, stacks of bonds, a pistol, and one name I never expected to see, Taryn, on a forged contract. One that tied her, not Maris, to a private account in Everett Fenton's name. It didn't take long for Taryn to show up. Less than 24 hours after I opened the safe, she was on my porch, flawless as ever in her pressed beige trench coat and heels that didn't quite suit the gravel road. She carried no purse, no folder, just that smile, the one I used to mistake for love. I didn't open the door right away. I stood behind it, watching her through the lace curtain, listening to the rapid thud of my heartbeat in my ears. Then I turned the knob and stepped out. She beat me to speaking. "I didn't come to fight," she said, voice almost a whisper. "Good," I said, "because I'm not in the mood to lose my temper." She glanced past me toward the orchard. "Nice out here, peaceful." "Exactly what I wanted," I said. "Away from people who lie to my face." Taryn's jaw tensed, barely. Then she blinked and stepped forward, hands open like some faux apology dove. "Liora, I get it. You're angry, and maybe you should be, but we can still fix this." I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Fix this?" "I mean it." Her voice dropped. "We can draw up a new agreement, forget the sale, start over, as partners." I crossed my arms. "You forged my signature." I panicked. Mom said, "She made it sound like we had no choice." "You sold the business." "I didn't know what else to do." "You buried my name." She looked down. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." I stared at her. For a flicker of a second, I wanted to believe she meant it, that the years we shared meant something more than strategy, but I saw her hand twitch, just a bit, and I knew she wasn't here to make peace. She was here to survive. "You found the safe, didn't you?" she said, eyes lifting slowly. "I knew you'd go back there." I didn't respond. She stepped closer. "Liora, whatever's in there, it's dangerous, not just for Mom, not just for me, for you too." I held her gaze. "You mean the forged contract in your name? Or the one that links you to Fenton?" Her face paled. It was quick, but I caught it. "You don't understand," she said. "He's not the kind of man you expose." "I'm not the kind of woman you frame." Something flickered in her expression, fear, maybe, or anger. But then she straightened, smoothing the front of her coat. "We're still sisters," she said, as if the word had any magic left in it. "And you need to ask yourself, how far are you willing to go? You blow this up, you burn us both." I didn't answer right away, because part of me remembered. The sleepovers, the late-night baking trials, the whispered plans in a shared bedroom, but those girls were long gone. "I'll burn what's already on fire," I said quietly, "and if you don't want to go up with it, I suggest you back away." Her eyes hardened. She nodded once, not in agreement, but in recognition. She knew it was over. Still, before leaving, she tried one more thing. As she turned to walk down the steps, she said over her shoulder, "Mom's not as strong as she used to be. If this breaks her, that's on you." She didn't wait for my answer, because she knew it already. That night, I stared at the orchard under the stars. No wind, no movement, just silence. And then, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I picked up, waited. A voice I hadn't heard in weeks. "Maris." "Liora," she said, "don't hang up." I didn't speak. "I know you're angry, and I know you think you understand everything, but you don't." Still, I said nothing. "There's something in that safe that doesn't just hurt us. It hurts people we owe, people who are watching. If you make this public—" "You lied to me my whole life." Her breath hitched. "It was to protect you." "No, it was to protect yourself. You think this is victory, digging up graves you're not ready to bury?" I was quiet. Then, "You buried yourself, Mom. I just read the headstone." She didn't speak again. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of how far this had come and how close I was to the end. But even I didn't see the next move coming. The next morning, a black SUV idled at the end of my driveway. Inside, a man in a suit handed me a white envelope and said, "You're being summoned to mediation by Maris and Liora Vance, unless you'd prefer the legal route." He handed me a second paper. Inside, a gag agreement, a buyout offer, and a thinly veiled threat. I didn't sign the gag order. I tore it in half while the man in the suit was still standing there, his engine running like a countdown. He didn't speak, just watched, then got back in the SUV and drove off, kicking up gravel behind him like dust on a burial. I stood in the orchard for a long time after that. The wind had shifted, cooler now. The trees rustled like they were whispering something to one another, something I didn't need to hear, because I already knew. It was time to end it. I walked back to the house, pulled open the envelope that held everything, the forged contracts, the bank statements, the receipts with my signature that wasn't mine. And I added the new evidence, the photo, the flash drive, the safe's contents, the letter Maris wrote to Fenton. I slid it all into a manila folder and drove straight to the county investigator's office. The receptionist tried to wave me off, told me to come back Monday, but something in my voice, quiet, steady, made her stop. 10 minutes later, I was in a room with 2 agents and a recorder running. I said it all. Taryn's fraud, Maris's laundering, the sale, the lies, the bribes. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I just told the truth. And when I walked out of that building, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean. The press came after that. Local at first, then regional. It turned out Fenton's name had surfaced in 3 other cases, and once my evidence went public, the cracks turned to fractures. Maris was arrested a week later. No cameras, no spectacle, just quiet handcuffs at a gated house and a lawyer with too many folders. Taryn didn't go quietly. She held a press conference, sobbing into a silk blouse, painting herself as the manipulated daughter who never wanted to hurt anyone. But the contracts in the safe had her name on every page. No amount of eyeliner or crocodile tears could erase them. She was indicted for wire fraud, identity theft, and obstruction. The bakery shuttered. Vance and daughters faded from the window like a ghost that never existed. And I stayed in the orchard, not because I was hiding, but because I finally knew who I was without them. The day the first harvest came in, Eli brought over a group of volunteers, neighbors, market friends, strangers who'd heard the story and just wanted to help. We picked apples under a sky so blue it felt like a second chance. Children ran between the rows. Laughter echoed off the barn walls. A woman hugged me with tears in her eyes and said, "Thank you for standing up." But I didn't do it for them. I did it for the girl who stood behind the bakery counter for years without being seen, for the woman who kept receipts like they were prayers, for the daughter who believed love had to be earned through silence. I did it for her. And now I sell jam and cider and stories. I don't flinch when the phone rings. I don't wait for permission, and I don't call it revenge anymore. I call it remembering. Because in the end, this wasn't about justice. It was about clarity. Some families heal, others rot, and the hardest part is learning which one yours is before it's too late. But once you know, you build your own. No blood required, just roots and choice. So if you're listening, if you've ever been erased, minimized, made to feel like you owed someone everything just for existing, let this be your sign. Freedom doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives on the quietest day, with sun on your skin and your own name finally safe in your mouth. Thanks for listening to my story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of something buried, subscribe, like, and share. Tell your truth, comment below, and come back for more stories like this. We rise by naming what tried to sink us, and we rise louder when we rise together.